That concludes item 17. We now have the following motion to turn to, and I remind members that we've got timed business at 10 o'clock. So we're going to need to do what we can with this. So I call Mr. Gavin Drake to move the motion, the text of which can be found on order paper 11. If you can, could you come to the podium, please? Thank you. You have up to 10 minutes, but if you could be briefer, that would be good.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to speak very fast with apologies for the signers and people hard of hearing. Members of Synod, I'd prepared a very lengthy speech full of examples and facts, figures and anecdotes, but I tore that up this morning and I intend to be brief. Time is short, and I know we've heard a lot about safeguarding and safeguarding failures these past few days. It could be traumatic, and I don't want to add to trauma. Before saying what this motion is, I want to say what it isn't, because it's important that two things are understood. Firstly, this is not a vote of no confidence in the Archbishop's Council. As I drafted this motion and consulted with a range of Synod members, some people urged me to table a simple vote of no confidence. Such a motion would have generated a shed load of headlines, but it wouldn't have achieved anything, and I'm not convinced that the majority of this Synod is in a place where it wants to pass such a vote of no confidence. So this motion is not that. Secondly, it's not calling for a wide-ranging inquiry into every safeguarding body in the Church of England. Passing this motion will not result in every diocesan safeguarding team having to explain themselves to the person appointed to conduct the inquiry. This is not calling for the equivalent of PCR 3 or anything close to that. There's a small technical amendment which I fully support, which hopes to make that clear. It's about the structures. So let's look at what this motion is. The original draft motion contained only clauses 4 to 8 of the present motion. It was tabled as a following or further motion to yesterday's presentation on the disbanding of the ISB. It was ruled out of order on the basis that that presentation was freestanding and not linked to a report. Really? What is GS MISC 1341 if it's not a report by the Secretary-General on behalf of the Archbishop's Council on recent developments to the Independent Safeguarding Board, and GS MISC 1341 mentioned several times by the panel in the presentation yesterday. But it was ruled out of order, so it was necessary to find another way to table the motion, and to do this we added the preamble to make the motion relevant as a following further motion to the annual report of the Archbishop's Council. It's this motion before us today. The people that I consulted over the wording of the motion include lawyers, both a solicitor and a barrister. They and I do not accept that the original motion was out of order, but the legal team ruled it was, I believe, in an attempt to prevent debate. Yesterday, we witnessed the Registrar ruling out of order various procedural points of order that had been moved to allow Jasvinder Sanghera and Steve Reeves to address us. This included the overruling the Archbishop Stephen's decision to use his powers to invite non-members to speak on the basis that it was unlawful to do so, as the power in the Constitution referred to the Presidents plural rather than Presidents singular. I think such a ruling contravenes the standard English legal precedent that the singular should be construed to include plural and the plural should be construed to include the single. But the Synod prevailed, and we did hear from Jasvinder and Steve.
Mr. Drake, can you please keep your speech to the details of your motion, please?
The Synod prevailed. We did hear from Jasvinder and Steve, and we heard how their narrative differed so significantly from the narrative we've been given by the Archbishop's Council and by the Secretary-General in his report. Yesterday's presentation presented a picture of the ISB, which was being micromanaged by the Archbishop's Council. Independence of thought and independence of action seemed to have been something the Archbishop's Council couldn't tolerate, and was met with petty actions such as cutting off their telephone lines. Where does the truth lie? I don't know. My guess is the truth is on both sides. But this motion is not about getting to the truth about what happened with the ISB. Yesterday and again this morning, we heard that the Archbishop's Council are commissioning an independent review about that to report to us in November. I welcome that, but that isn't what this motion is about either. But Synod, we need to understand that while the ISB is not working for the Archbishop's Council, it was working for victims and survivors. many of whom, far more than the tenor of having their case formally reviewed by the ISB, felt that with the ISB, the Church was finally listening and understanding. The original language used by the Archbishop's Council to announce the disbanding of the ISB used the language of a reset. You cannot simply reset relationships with victims and survivors. Their journey isn't a straight line from A to B. It's a journey that goes from A to G to Z to R to K and back to G before heading back to A. And it's not going from A to B in a straight line, it's going up and down. It's a messy journey to recovery. It's not a flat linear line, it goes up and down and forwards and backwards. It's a journey of multiple axes. The disbanding of the ISB and the manner in which it was done has done untold damage to many, many people. And we as a church have got to stop hurting people. So this motion at its core calls for an independent inquiry led by a senior lawyer, a judge or KC, into safeguarding bodies, functions, policies and practice. As I said earlier, this is not PCR3, nor is it a review of individual cases. It's an inquiry into our structures. We have, until recently, had the ISB. We've also have the National Safeguarding Panel, the National Safeguarding Steering Group, the Lead Safeguarding Bishop and the Assistant Lead Safeguarding Bishops, the National Safeguarding Team, Diocesan Safeguarding Advisory Panels, Diocesan Safeguarding Advisors and Officers, and the House of Bishops who are responsible for drafting safeguarding guidance. It's too complicated. As somebody said at question time this week, if we in the church don't know where to go, how can we expect people outside the church to understand? An independent inquiry will shine a light on these complex structures and make recommendations for a simplified, more effective structure and improve our safeguarding. Yesterday, the Archbishop's Council said they need outside help. They acknowledge that they can't bring about reform by themselves. An independent inquiry will provide that outside help. They also expressed concern that the size of the ISB meant it was ineffective as it didn't have sufficient internal challenge. I think the same could be said of the Archbishop's Council structurally. This is why the motion calls for the report of the inquiry to come back to this synod so that we can make decisions about the future of Church of England safeguarding. The central structures of the Church of England do seem to be reluctant to fully embrace good safeguarding, as we saw yesterday with the efforts made to stop us hearing from Jaswinder and Steve. Synod, please approve this motion, which will put us on the start of a journey to a wholesale root and branch reform of our unwieldy safeguarding processes. Today we can start to make the Church a safer place, and I move the motion standing in my name.
Thank you. This item is now open for debate. Speech limit is 3 minutes, reminding Synod members that we have 6. I call Peter Adams to speak. Thank you.
Thank you for calling me Chair. Peter Adams, St Albans 392. I share many of Gavin's concerns. Members will know that I have spoken on them on many occasions over the past few years. However, I'm afraid I cannot support this motion, and I'd ask other members to vote with me against it. It's clear the Church of England is in a deeply troubling place around safeguarding. That is the concern behind the following motion. We must, as a matter of urgency, do something about it. But this, I suggest, is not what we need. We need to address the abuses that have been perpetrated in our midst, and the re-abuses that have taken place, by the continued unwillingness to address it or the ineffectual handling of it, and the consequent deep distrust and toxic attitudes, not least in this place. What happened yesterday as we discussed the ISB was the result of those attitudes. I'm sorry, Gavin and others who've worked to bring this motion, many of your friends, but I don't believe this will do that. In a question yesterday relating to the redress motion, I asked for a truth and reconciliation process to look at the handling of abuse in the church. We need the truth, we need justice, I agree. But we need to do that together with grace and mercy. As a bottom line for the New Start, we need to approach this in a deeply Christian and restorative way, so as not to test our schedule further and this synod's patience. I have not introduced an amendment, but can I ask our archbishops, along with the House and College of Bishops and the Archbishops' Council, to commit in openness and accountability to this synod to make this journey a matter of urgency. We owe this to the survivors of abuse in our church, and we owe it to the gospel that we represent. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Wilson.
John Wilson, Lichfield 341. Apologies if you've got something in mind, but we're up against time business. So understanding order 34.1c, I wonder if we can adjourn the debate and resume it after the timed business.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson has moved the motion that the debate now be adjourned and resumed at a later date. If the motion for the adjournment of the debate is carried, the debate will be adjourned and then resumed in accordance with that motion. If it's lost, the motion for the adjournment of the debate will not be moved again, except with the permission of the chair. Yep, that fits. Cool. Sorry, bear with me. I need to call you as the mover of that motion for the adjournment to speak to it and move it. You have 2 minutes, which ironically is exactly what we have left when I was going to adjourn this anyway. Helpful as ever. Thank you. Go ahead.
Apologies, Chair. This is an important amendment that's come forward. It's quite a lengthy one, and I think it's something which we do really need to debate. Now, we don't want to actually just adjourn it and then have it come back 2 months' time, 3 months' time, 4 months' time. We need to actually deal with it today. So that's the reason for our moving the motion to have it returned after the timed business.
Gavin Drake is to respond to that.
Apparently, I have to move it, so I do move it.
He does.
I fully support that motion. It's good housekeeping. Thank you.
Thank you. Synod, I now put that motion to you. Those in favour, please show. Those against, please show. That motion is carried. Thank you. This item is adjourned.